In the world of free solo climbing, death doesn't announce itself. It arrives in a heartbeat, turning years of skill and experience into nothing more than a tragic miscalculation. 5 experienced climbers would learn that even the smallest mistake can be fatal. It was September 14, 2016. A 29-year-old software engineer from Denver, Sterling Brooks, arrived beneath Devil's Tower just after dawn. A methodical weekend athlete known for clean movement, spare gear, and meticulous route notes. Reserved and detail-driven, he treated climbing like code: plan, test, refine. His objective was the Durance route, a moderate historic line up the phonolite porphyry columns. He had led it with protection once and chose it as a controlled check before harder fall goals. He brought the bare minimum: tight shoes, chalk, a wind shell, and a small bottle of water. Forecasts mentioned a chance of showers later. The horizon looked quiet enough. At about 6:45 a.m., he stepped onto the first pitch. The lower chimneys and stemming corners fit his style. He bridged between columns, pressed his back, and placed his feet precisely on narrow smears. In roughly 25 minutes, he was near 180 feet, pausing briefly on small stances before linking the next sequences. The surface was cool and dry, the rubber biting the grain. Around 8:10 a.m., scattered drizzle drifted across the face and beaded on the columns. Friction faded quickly. He tested a smear and felt the change. Upward still seemed simpler than reversing through tight features made slick. He moved into a narrower section where body position mattered more than strength. Left palm on a rounded edge, right foot high on a smear, right hand searching for a shallow dish to stand into the next corner. Water traced the groove and darkened his chalk. At roughly 240 feet, the right foot skated. The smear that had dried gave nothing wet. His hips swung out, and the bridge tension that kept him close to the wall unraveled. He tried to slide the left palm higher along the rounded edge, but the surface was slick. Both feet cut as his center drifted away from the columns. With no protection and no stance to reset, he peeled cleanly. The first drop was open and vertical. A dihedral clipped his shoulder and hip and altered the line of descent, but not enough to stop it. He fell past a rib that briefly redirected his path before he impacted a broad ledge roughly 40 feet above the talus. The impact caused catastrophic traumatic brain injury and high thoracic spinal trauma. He did not move. The drizzle thickened, then steadied. A party on a neighboring line registered the sound and caught a glimpse of motion. They called for help at about 8:35 a.m. Rangers coordinated ground teams and helicopter support because of the ledge position. Wet rock and exposure slowed anchor building and access. Around 10:10 a.m., first responders reached him and found no survivable signs. Rangers noted injuries incompatible with life and documented the scene before beginning a technical recovery. The recovery was methodical. The ledge offered room to work, but demanded careful rigging. A technical lowering sequence navigated the columnar features to the base. Equipment was documented. Procedures followed the usual checklists. His shoes showed worn edges. The incident report identified wet rock as the primary factor and noted that column geometry can deflect but seldom arrest an unroped fall. Sterling's profile threaded through the day. He built software that managed other people's risks and chased failure modes until they disappeared. He climbed the same way, logging splits, annotating sequences, tracking rubber wear. Friends described him as quiet, patient, and steady. The partner who taped down a route photo so the wind would not flip the page. Those habits put him on countless summits and were present here, but the margin was thin and the conditions narrowed it further. Family and friends gathered a week later at the monument's amphitheater. They remembered a person who showed up early, carried little, and earned his progress through repetition. A memorial fund went to safety education. His notes were shared with an accident analysis group. The final lesson returned to the surface itself. A moderate line still demands honest readings of friction, footwork, and weather. A single wet smear erased the buffer he had built with preparation. 300 miles southwest, another climber was already planning her final ascent. She had no idea that California's granite walls would soon claim her life in a way that made Sterling's quick fall seem merciful. It was June 3, 2017. Paloma Gray, a 34-year-old pediatric nurse from San Francisco, stood beneath Half Dome's regular northwest face as dawn broke across Yosemite Valley. Her colleagues knew her as fearless and competitive, someone who pushed back against suggestions that her 5'4" frame limited her climbing potential. She worked brutal 12-hour hospital shifts, using weekends in granite as an escape. Recent divorce proceedings had left her finances tight and judgment questionable, friends noting her increasingly risky solo adventures. The regular northwest face stretched 2,000 feet above her, a 23-pitch route she had completed with ropes only twice, both times struggling with technical sections. She carried almost nothing: a chalk bag, climbing shoes, and a single 16-ounce water bottle. Her plan was aggressive: start before sunrise, reach the summit before afternoon crowds, prove the divorce and work stress had not broken her focus. She began at 4:15 a.m., headlamp beam dancing across granite as she found rhythm on lower pitches. The rock felt cool and solid. She moved efficiently, linking pitches where possible, pausing briefly to shake out her arms. By 6:30 a.m., she had gained significant height, her pace exceeding previous rope descents. Around 8 a.m., she reached Thank God Ledge at roughly 1,200 feet, drinking half her water and feeling good about progress. Technical crux sections lie ahead, thin finger cracks and delicate face moves demanding precision. As sun climbed higher, the granite began absorbing heat, radiating warmth that made her palms damp. She pressed on, knowing retreat from this height would be nearly as dangerous as continuing. Upper pitches proved more challenging than memory suggested. Small holds heated under direct sun, making fingertips slide on crystals that should have felt secure. By 10:30 a.m., she was approaching 1,700 feet, forearms pumping with lactic acid as dehydration set in. The water bottle was nearly empty, and muscle cramps were starting in her calves. At approximately 1,750 feet, exhaustion caught up with technique. Reaching for a small edge above her head, her right hand lost purchase on a small crystalline edge that had become warm and slightly greasy under direct sunlight. Her left hand, already strained from supporting body weight, could not compensate for the sudden balance shift. Both feet lost contact as her center of gravity pulled away from the wall. There was no protection, no rope, no second chance. The terrain below was steep enough that she touched almost nothing during the fall. She dropped nearly 1,750 feet with only brief contact with granite ribs. Her body struck the talus slope head first, the impact crushing her skull and severing her cervical spine. Death was instantaneous from a catastrophic traumatic brain injury and complete spinal cord transection. Hikers approaching Half Dome via the cables route discovered her body at 2:47 p.m., recognizing she had fallen from high on the northwest face. They contacted park rangers, who arrived at 4:20 p.m. Recovery was postponed until morning for team safety and better lighting, requiring helicopter extraction. Yosemite Search and Rescue found her shoes still laced tight, chalk bag nearly empty, water bottle bone dry. The medical examiner confirmed death from multiple traumatic injuries consistent with a high-altitude fall. Hospital colleagues established a scholarship fund for nursing students interested in wilderness medicine. Investigation revealed the classic pattern: competent climber, familiar route, small margins for error. Paloma had technical skills but lacked the safety buffer that partners in protection provide. Her competitive nature and recent stress may have influenced the decision to attempt such an ambitious solo with minimal water. Friends described someone who never backed down from challenges, whether dealing with difficult parents in a pediatric ward or committing to hard moves on the rock. That determination served her well in most situations, but proved fatal when combined with dehydration, fatigue, and the absolute consequences of free soloing. Paloma's story joined a growing list of solo climbing accidents that year, each reminder that granite walls show no mercy for human ambition. But her death in California's high country was just one chapter in a darker pattern emerging across America's climbing areas, where other soloists were about to discover their own fatal limits. It was March 22, 2018. Bastion Stone, a 26-year-old freelance photographer from Los Angeles, pulled into Joshua Tree National Park as the afternoon sun began its descent. At 6 feet 1 inch with a muscular 175-pound build, Bastion had carved out a niche documenting extreme sports, his Instagram account boasting 5,000 followers who craved increasingly spectacular content. His bold personality and hunger for the perfect shot had earned him magazine contracts, but also a reputation for taking dangerous risks. The pressure to produce viral content had been mounting. His latest posts were getting fewer likes, and sponsors were asking for more dramatic footage. Bastion had spent the drive planning his evening shoot at Intersection Rock, targeting North Overhang, a classic 5.9 route stretching roughly 120 feet up the Monzogranite Formation. He had climbed it with ropes multiple times, but never solo while operating camera equipment. His gear setup was elaborate for a free solo attempt. Along with climbing shoes and a chalk bag, he carried a professional DSLR camera, a wireless remote trigger, and a lightweight tripod. The plan was methodical. Position the camera at the base, set the timer to capture images every 30 seconds, then climb as golden hour light painted the desert landscape. Bastion arrived at Intersection Rock around 5:15 p.m., spending nearly an hour positioning camera equipment. Late March weather was perfect, with temperatures in the mid-70s and virtually no wind. At 6:30 p.m., Bastion began climbing. Lower sections felt familiar and secure, his fingers finding crack systems and feet placing confidently on textured granite. Every 30 seconds, the camera fired, capturing his steady progress. The technical crux section began around 80 feet, where the route required precise footwork on small crystal formations embedded in the granite face. These crystals provided crucial holds, but were notoriously fragile under repeated climber use. Bastion had used these same holds dozens of times before, but always with rope security. At approximately 95 feet, Bastion paused to position himself for the climactic photograph. The sun was perfectly positioned behind him, and he wanted to capture a dramatic reach toward summit holds. He shifted weight onto a small patina nub he had used in past climbs. As he adjusted his position to face the camera angle, the nub fractured under lateral pressure. The failure was instantaneous and catastrophic. The crystal broke away from the granite face, sending rock fragments tumbling as Bastion's left foot found empty air. His right hand, reaching dramatically for the camera shot, was too far from any secure hold. His left hand could not support his full body weight as his hips swung away from the wall. Bastion fell approximately 95 feet through mostly open air. Impact with rocky ground below was devastating. He landed in a seated position, tremendous force driving his femur bones upward through his pelvis while simultaneously compressing his spine. The violent deceleration caused his head to snap forward with such force that multiple cervical vertebrae fractured, severing his spinal cord. A couple camping nearby heard the distinctive sound of falling rock, followed by camera equipment crashing to the ground. They discovered Bastion's motionless body at 6:52 p.m., immediately calling 911. His breathing was shallow and labored, blood trickling from his ears, indicating severe head trauma. San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and Joshua Tree Search and Rescue arrived at 8:30 p.m., finding Bastion unconscious with obvious spinal injuries and massive internal bleeding. Emergency helicopter transport was initiated immediately, but the extent of injuries was beyond medical intervention. He died en route at 9:47 p.m. from multiple traumatic injuries, including a complete spinal cord transection and massive pelvic fractures. Investigation revealed tragic irony captured in Bastion's final photographs. The interval timer captured the moment the foothold sheared away, followed by empty frames as the camera continued firing. Images showed the small formation breaking away from the wall, followed by empty frames as the camera continued firing. The desert wind continued to blow across Joshua Tree's granite formations, indifferent to human ambition. But Bastion's story was just one thread in a tapestry of tragedy that year, as other climbers were discovering that the mountains demanded payment in blood for the smallest miscalculations. It was October 7th, 2015. Anakah Lowe, a 31-year-old physical therapist from New York City, drove through pre-dawn darkness toward the Shawangunk Ridge. Recently promoted to clinic director at a Manhattan rehabilitation center, Anakah had built her reputation on analytical precision and methodical problem-solving, traits that served her well both in treating patients and on technical rock climbs. Her colleagues knew her as someone who never accepted limitations. The promotion had come with a price. 12-hour days managing staff had reduced her climbing time to almost nothing over the past 2 months. The absence gnawed at her, creating restless energy that no amount of professional success could satisfy. She needed to prove that her skills remained sharp despite corporate demands. High exposure had always been her benchmark route. The classic 5.6 line on the Gunks quartz conglomerate cliffs represented everything she loved about climbing: technical precision, mental commitment, and the famous traverse that gave the route its name. She had led it with protection over a dozen times. Anakah arrived at the Mohonk Preserve parking area at 6:30 a.m., the October air crisp and still. Recent rainfall had left the rock damp in places, but she dismissed the concern as she laced her climbing shoes and chalked her hands. She began climbing at exactly 7 a.m., her movements deliberate and controlled. The lower sections felt reassuring. Her fingers found familiar holds, her feet placed precisely on the textured quartz conglomerate. Each move flowed into the next with muscle memory of countless previous ascents. She reached the traverse in good time, pausing briefly to shake out her arms. The traverse went smoothly, her body moving sideways across the wall with practiced efficiency. The holds were positive enough, and the exposure felt manageable given her experience. She reached the belay stance and prepared for the crux section above, the famous roof above, which requires pulling over a steep overhang on big but committing holds. As she began the roof sequence, trouble appeared. Her forearms, unused to sustained climbing after the 2-month layoff, began to fill with lactic acid more quickly than expected. The pump grew more pronounced as she worked through the inverted moves. Each hold required more effort to maintain. At the lip of the roof, roughly 160 feet above the ground, Anakah faced the route's most challenging moment. She needed to swing her feet up from the overhanging section while maintaining her grip on increasingly marginal holds. Her left hand was locked onto what should have been a secure jug, but recent moisture had made the hold subtly slippery. As Anakah committed to the swing, her left hand began to slip from the damp hold. Her right hand, already strained from supporting her body weight, could not compensate for the sudden loss of her primary grip. Her left hand slid off the damp jug, and the sudden shift caused her right hand to open as well. She fell through mostly open air from 160 feet above the talus slope. The cliff face was steep enough that she had minimal contact with the rock during her descent, her body accelerating freely through space until impact with the boulder field below. The collision was catastrophic, her head striking granite with tremendous force, while her spine compressed and fractured. Death was instantaneous from a massive traumatic brain injury and a complete cervical spine fracture. A climbing guide with clients on an adjacent route witnessed the fall and immediately began descent procedures. He reached Anakah's location at 9:23 a.m., finding her motionless among the boulders with injuries that were clearly unsurvivable. His radio call brought the New Paltz Rescue Squad and the Ulster County Sheriff's Department to the scene. The recovery operation proved technically challenging due to steep terrain and loose rock conditions. Specialized rope systems were required to safely extract Anakah's body from the boulder field, a process that took nearly 3 hours. Anakah's colleagues at the rehabilitation clinic established a memorial fund supporting research into climbing-related injuries, recognizing the irony that someone who helped others recover from trauma had been claimed by her own pursuit of physical challenge. The autumn leaves continued their slow drift to the forest floor around the Gunks, indifferent to human ambition. But Anakah's story was merely another chapter in climbing's ongoing ledger of risk and consequence, where other athletes would soon discover that even familiar ground could become treacherous. It was November 18th, 2017. Remy Vance, a 28-year-old wilderness guide and climbing instructor from Las Vegas, stood in the pre-dawn darkness at the base of Cloud Tower in Red Rock Canyon, his headlamp illuminating the rust-colored Aztec sandstone that stretched nearly 900 feet above him. Known throughout the local climbing community for his philosophical approach and patient mentorship of younger climbers, Remy possessed the kind of calm wisdom that made nervous beginners feel safe. His lean 5'10" frame and wiry 160-pound build had been sculpted by years of desert climbing, but recent medical news had cast a shadow over his future. 3 months earlier, doctors had diagnosed him with early-stage multiple sclerosis, a progressive neurological condition that would eventually rob him of the precise motor control that climbing demanded. The diagnosis had created an urgent timeline in his mind. Crimson Chrysalis represented the culmination of years of preparation. The classic multi-pitch route, rated 5.8 to 5.9 across its 23 pitches, wound its way up Cloud Tower through technical face climbs and exposed traverses. Remy had climbed it with ropes numerous times, studying each pitch until he could visualize the entire route from memory. The early November morning was perfect for climbing, with temperatures in the low 50s and virtually no wind. His gear was minimal: climbing shoes, chalk bag, and a small water bottle. Remy began climbing at 6:15 a.m., his movements flowing with practiced efficiency. The lower pitches felt familiar and secure, his fingers finding subtle texture variations that provided purchase on the seemingly smooth rock face. By 9:30 a.m., he had completed roughly half the route, feeling strong and confident. Around 10:45 a.m., as Remy approached the 600-foot mark, he noticed the first subtle tremor in his right hand. It was barely perceptible, just a slight quiver in his fingers as he reached for a small edge, but he recognized it immediately as a symptom of his neurological condition. The tremor lasted only a few seconds before subsiding, but its appearance sent a chill through him. He continued climbing, trying to push the incident from his mind. The next several moves required precise finger strength on small, crimped holds. His left hand felt solid and secure, but he could sense a subtle change in the fine motor control of his right hand. At approximately 650 feet above the ground, Remy encountered a sequence that required a dynamic reach between two small edges separated by a blank section of sandstone. His left hand was securely positioned on a positive hold, his feet well placed on small crystals. As he committed to the dynamic movement, extending his right hand toward the target edge, the neurological tremor returned with devastating timing. His fingers, which should have closed securely around the small hold, instead brushed against the sandstone without establishing the necessary grip. The tremor, no more than a brief flutter in his fingertips, was enough to prevent his hand from latching onto the crucial hold. With his right hand failing to secure the target, Remy's body weight shifted away from the wall. His left hand, already strained from supporting his full weight, could not compensate for the sudden imbalance. His feet lost contact with their small crystal footholds as his center of gravity pulled him backward into space. The fall was catastrophic and largely uninterrupted. Remy dropped through mostly open air for over 650 feet, his body accelerating under gravity's relentless pull. He struck the rocky ground at the base of Cloud Tower head first, the tremendous impact crushing his skull and causing instantaneous death from massive traumatic brain injury and complete cervical spine fracture. A group of climbers preparing to ascend a neighboring route witnessed the fall and immediately called emergency services. At 10:42 a.m., Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Search and Rescue responded quickly, but there was nothing medical intervention could accomplish. The medical examiner noted signs consistent with his documented neurological condition, which may have influenced his grip control, that had contributed to Remy's fatal mistake. The subtle tremor that caused him to miss the crucial handhold was documented as a symptom of his multiple sclerosis. The desert wind continued to sculpt the sandstone formations of Red Rock Canyon, indifferent to human dreams and the cruel timing of progressive disease. But Remy's story marked the end of a particularly dark chapter in American climbing. 5 deaths across 3 years that had reminded the community that even the most experienced athletes remained vulnerable to the unforgiving mathematics of gravity and stone. Thanks for watching. Ready for more? Click the next video on your screen now.